why in the world would the networks run Donald Trump's address tonight when we know that Donald Trump is going to be using it to spread these lies? There were times they didn't run Barack Obama's addresses. I don't think they did in a 2011 address. There were times they didn't run other presidents' address. So why should they run Donald Trump's address tonight when they know he's going to be spreading lies and falsehoods?
Well, there's probably two answers to that. Or there's a cynical answer to that, right, which is that Donald Trump does tend to drive ratings, even when he's not performing in front of some huge crowd, that they'll get an audience and so forth, that this is a story that's in the public eye and therefore of consequence. But as you pointed out, in 2014, they did not carry a similar address by Barack Obama, and we know this one is going to be filled with lies. I don't want to give away my charts, but I'll tease my charts slightly to say that the numbers simply don't work. There are 400,000 people who try to cross the southern border every year. 60% of them are families and unaccompanied children. So it doesn't leave a lot of people to fill up this terrorist bucket of 4,000 a day or whatever it is that they're claiming. And so the numbers just don't work at all.
Well, the answer to your question, Joe, is they shouldn't. One of the most time-honored and powerful ways a president has to communicate with the American people is through a primetime Oval Office address. The majesty of the setting, the request for valuable television time, network TV time, with the ability to capture the focus of the people of the United States to, maybe the signal to the country that says, this is something of national importance. As your president, I need to communicate with my fellow citizens our shared challenges and how we're going to meet them together. We've seen that before. Done right, a nighttime Oval Office address can unite the country in trying times. It can inspire the better angels in ourselves. But all the signs here indicate that is not what Donald Trump has in mind, and the networks have a decision to make. Do they want to run the promise of more lies, more misleading statistics, more twisting of reality, mindless confrontation, all for the sake of defending Trump's dark, twisted fantasy on a wall on the Mexican border to fight an enemy that doesn't exist except in the most fevered swamps of American politics? Do they want to do that for ratings? Like they've done with other presidents in other times, the networks should refuse to turn over the airwaves to Donald Trump tonight for what they know objectively to be a steady stream of lies. Maybe that will stop him from debasing yet another one of our historic, solemn, and cherished presidential traditions. They shouldn't run it, not on the main networks.
It's a powerful argument, Mika, and I think a lot of people probably agree with you. Gene, let me ask you, if they didn't run Barack Obama's address on immigration in 2014 because they thought it was too political, what in the world would be their justification for running it tonight when they know that objectively, by the numbers, by the data, Donald Trump is going to go on TV tonight and he's going to lie about an imaginary crisis at the southern border?
Well, yeah, there's no objective good reason to do it, but I imagine they felt cornered. The way he demonizes the media. If they refuse, it's going to be, see, they're all biased. It's all fake news. They won't even carry, an address. I'm the president.
Doesn't
I need to
matter.
speak to the nation. That sort of thing. And so you get that, or you end up carrying a speech that as Mika said, is going to be filled with lies. So I think what they this is not from any inside knowledge of what the network suits are thinking, but I think they're probably trying to figure out how they can do something close to real-time fact-checking the way you did at that time. Does that really help? I'm not sure. It's going to be lies, and we know it. And the one thing you should keep in mind is that this sort of set-piece speech is not Donald Trump's forte. And he could, in the end, come off looking not only mendacious, but kind of foolish. He tends to be kind of stiff and stilted and this is not what he's really good at. But that doesn't change the basic principle, the question you're asking, and I don't have a good answer.
Well, Willie, if you're a network president, you don't worry about the catcalls from the audience. You don't worry about the most fevered base in America, whether it's on the far left or whether it's on the far right. I mean, we've heard a lot of people talking, on the Democratic side, justifying a young Democratic congresswoman's falsehoods and saying, well, it comes from her heart. No. It's either true or it's false. And if it's a lie, you call out the lie. And that's happening now on the right, and it has been happening for years now with the Donald Trump supporter. If you're a network executive and you know that somebody is coming on to spread hatred through lies and misinformation, it seems to me that you're just like a lawyer that can't put a witness on the stand if you know they're going to commit perjury.
Well, I think the decision has been made at the network level, and the only thing I would say is that I trust Rachel Maddow, and I trust Lester Holt, and I trust Savannah, and I trust the people we have here to do exactly what you and Mika did that day during the speech this summer, which is to go through and pick it apart and point out point by point where the inaccuracies, where the lies are, if he presents those. So I think they will do a good job of that. But I think to your larger point of networks being scared of being called fake news, spoiler alert, he's going to call us fake news anyway, so you can't worry about that.
Yeah.
That's what he's already laid that down. The other thing I would say on the ratings question, I'm not so sure. He's a wildly unpopular president. I don't think this country is going to tune in droves. I don't think it's a ratings decision. The show that's on tonight on NBC at 9 o'clock is Ellen Game of Games. You tell me who's a better TV draw, Ellen DeGeneres or Donald Trump.
Well, I love Ellen.
What we found, and of course this was something that enraged Donald Trump during the campaign, we always found during the campaign that when we had Bernie Sanders on and Chris Christie, we get higher ratings than when we had Donald Trump on. This is a circus act that Americans have seen enough of. I'm not so sure it's going to drive the ratings. And again, I think you have a responsibility, if you're a lawyer, not to let somebody testify on the stand if you know they're going to commit perjury.
Exactly.
And if you're a network executive, you have a responsibility, if you have to let Donald Trump come on, not to give him 5, 10, 15 minutes of lie built on lie, built on lie, built on lie. You need somebody that will interrupt in real time and tell viewers in real time the president's claim of a crisis on, southern crisis on the border from terrorists streaming over the line is objectively false. The government's own records show only 6 crossed over the last calendar year, 7 times as many crossed the northern border. That sort of thing. You can't give him 5, 10, 15 minutes to build one lie on top of another lie on top of another lie, especially when you know, I will say it again, that he is going to be telling nothing but lies and falsehoods, and he's going to be twisting reality, just like he did. Mika, my God. And at this point, I've got to say, how stupid are Americans who still believe there's a crisis on the southern border? You got played as fools during the last 2 weeks of the campaign. Donald Trump's closing argument was that there was a caravan coming. They were going to invade America. You were going to be going to malls in Topeka, Kansas, or Charlotte, North Carolina. And there would be caravans, and they would be pulling up to your malls, and you'd be going into Arby's, and they'd be sleeping on the floor, thousands of them. You wouldn't even be able to go to Cracker Barrel or Whole Foods without being attacked. This is horrible.
Wait.
Oh, wait. Republicans got wiped out using that argument.
Because it was a
lie. The day after, they stopped the argument. We don't hear about caravan. Have you heard about the caravan? I haven't heard about the caravan. Have you heard about the caravan? Well, you know why you don't anymore? Because it never existed. They played you for suckers. They played you for fools, and I know that makes you angry. You know they're playing you for suckers and fools again? Telling you there's this crisis at the southern border when actually immigration has been flowing out instead of coming in. More Mexicans have been going home than coming back to the United States of America illegally. Did you know that? That's been going on not for 1 year, not for 2. Guess how many years? That's been going on for 10 years. You can look at Donald Trump's own statistics from Donald Trump's own government. It'll tell you that's been going on for a decade now. There is no crisis at the southern border except for the humanitarian crisis that Donald Trump created himself. And if he wants to fix that crisis, he doesn't need to come on TV and lie to you at night. All he needs to do is tell the Department of Homeland Security and his Justice Department to get the hell down to the border and take care of those kids, make sure they're okay, and do everything you can to get them reunited with their parents and sent home. That's the only crisis we have here. Donald Trump doesn't need to waste another hour of your time. And really, he needs to stop playing you for suckers. He really does. He needs to stop lying to you. I mean, I'm kind of sad. I feel sad for you that he thinks so little of you, that he'd just keep lying through his teeth, thinking that you were going to keep falling for his lies every day. I know you're not. I'm just wondering when he's going to get that message, Mika.
Well, the hope is that the lies aren't promulgated and that he's fact-checked in real time on any network that runs him. In real time. Still ahead.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.